said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about file uploads from a React app to a Sinatra backend. I took a little bit of time earlier today to go ahead and walk through this myself because I haven't done it in a while, and I realized I've only done it in Rails. I've never actually done it with straight up Sinatra. So it was interesting to be like, oh yeah, I can't use those things that are in Rails because we haven't done that yet. But it's still the basic principle. So I think I'll talk through a little bit of what it does first, and then how we do it, and then answer any questions or anything where you're stuck. Cool. Before we start, actually, is there anything that specifically you'd want me to focus on, or you want to just holler when we get there? Okay, we'll get it as we get it then. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, let me talk about it before I share stuff. So got our front end, we got our back end. Really doesn't matter which one is which. In our case, it's going to be Sinatra and React, not Recoil. So in our, we're going to have to make an HTTP request. So the way we send files over is by first through the browser, assuming we're using a browser, making a form that has the type of file. That'll bring up the little file picker. You can select the file and submit it that way. If we were not using React, we would probably want to do a form that has the you have to set the content type to like not URL encoded, view encoded. It's multimedia, multi-part, something like that. Haven't done it in a very long time. So, but in React, we're gonna want to do it the Reacty way. So what we're gonna do is have our onChange on our form element, just like any other form element, on our file form element, so that when they pick a file, we're actually going to take the file object and save it in state, so we can use it however we like. Then when they hit the submit button, we're going to do an onSubmit, and that onSubmit is going to take that file object, which is just an object in JavaScript. To send it properly, we need to create what's called a form data object that's built into JavaScript. You can look it up on MDN. And basically, we need to append that file information onto it. We can append more than one file, but we'll talk about that a bit. And then we fetch it. Do a post fetch, and it goes off. And that will send that form data with the binary data of the file as the body of that request. Just like any request, we're going to drop a .then or async on it, and we'll wait for the response. Assume it will be JSON. In this example I did, I sent back an OK message with the URL that it created, or a error message if it didn't work. And then we can just take that URL and use it in our app however we like. Just throw it in state and display the image, or it's just an image URL at that point. So we've got a form data sending binary file data to the API. On the back end, it's actually deceptively simple, but it's not obvious. It's simple. It's not even complex. It's hard to dig up exactly what to do because it's not documented very well, the file stuff. So what we're going to do is on our backend, we're going to have a route. That route is going to be listening for a post to wherever. When we do that, we're going to grab the thing that we sent via params. So I call it file or image or binary data or whatever we want to call it. We'll look for that parameter, and that will be the object that has all the stuff in it. And the thing that it sends over, or the thing that it creates when it gets it in the request, it's going to be an object you're going to have access to the file name that was sent over. And you're going to have access to the binary data that was sent over. But what it does is it throws that binary data in a temporary file somewhere in your system, usually /temp or /vartemp or whatever. Doesn't matter, because you can just grab that temporary URL of that object. And then you just decide where you want to put your images, copy it over there. And in this case, we're going to send back a URL that tells people where they can find the image they just uploaded. And that's it. It's like 4 lines. This is the simplest case. In an actual application, you would definitely want it to be a little bit more secure than this. Probably attach it to a username with a unique directory, or do it so no one can mess up their stuff. But that's all implementation details. So and that's the cycle: make the request, send the file, write the file, send back the URL. Any sort of high level questions about that stuff?
When we're go ahead, Carter. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a question about like when you store it in like the database, like we have like integers, we have like strings, like
Yeah.
how does is there a binary, or how does that get saved up?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways you can do it. With the SQLite database that we're using by default here, I would recommend, so what we're going to do in this case, we're going to write that binary data to a file in the file system. And if you want to keep a pointer to that in a database, I would say just store the file name, file path, URL, whatever you like there. It is possible to throw the binary data itself into a database. I don't think SQLite is really up for that task. Later on, if we look at SQL or something like that, or Postgres, we can talk about that more. I wouldn't throw the binary data in an SQLite database. It's possible, but it's not really built for stuff like that, I don't think. So yeah, short version, I would store the string of the file path in the database. Does that get what you're asking?
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you have something, Chippy?
No, really just that. It was, I mean, mine was going to be the same kind of question, but front end, like just, and I'm sure that you'll get into it when we create the form, but just like, how do we create that form for the file drop, and how do we make sure that it's like, if we want the user to upload an image, like that's the only type of file we accept?
Yeah, awesome. That's a really good question. I don't think there's any reasonable way to check that on the front end, because it's just going to be sending binary data over, and it could be a PNG or a JPEG or a bitmap or a GIF or whatever. You could check the file extension, but people can send over an Excel sheet with .png on it, and you would get that. I would think if you wanted to be strict about it just being an image, UI wise, I would check for like a ping GIF JPEG extension. That will not stop someone who is intent on sending bad data over. But I don't know. I'm sure that Ruby has ways to check the type of a file, and so I would use that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like super important, but like if we're asking for a picture and somebody like uploads a Word document, right? Like,
yeah, you can definitely do that on the back end more thoroughly, and probably pretty easily. I don't know how to do that off the top of my head though. It's interesting. Cool. Other questions? Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Here, let's see. Oh, I only have the one. Cool. So, awesome. So I went ahead and made y'all a little repo for this. I'm going to paste the URL in chat. So I made two repos. I made a front end and a back end repo. The front end one, I wrote all the instructions up. We're going to walk through. But yeah, it took, I don't know, it took about an hour to sort of track everything down on the Sinatra side that I needed to and get it working right. Now that I've done it once, the basic setup you do in 15 minutes from scratch, I think. So let's talk a little bit about what we have here. So let's talk about the front end first with the form and the file stuff. So basically, when I created these, I just went ahead and I copied the Sinatra template just for ease. But you can create your Sinatra app however you like, or your Rails app or Express app or whatever you like. Front end, we're just using React. So I just did a create React app and got rid of all the boilerplate junk. So let's, well, I'll walk through the instructions first and then look at the code all together. So this is what the form looks like. It's just a form. The important thing is here, it's the type of file. And that's basically what does the magic part there. So that's the thing that's going to give you the button that does a browse, or there are extensions and stuff. People have written stuff to do drag and drop. I'm not going to go over that now, but it's basically the same theoretically. Basically, we want a file input that's going to take that file and send the binary data up when we submit the form. The other important thing working with React is we want this to be a controlled component. So just like a text field or a dropdown or a radio button, when we change the value of this, in this case, it's going to be selecting a file, we're going to call a handler, and that'll set the state. And actually, just look at it right here. So the set file, right? So the change, so this is when we select the image. This is going to take the event, the onChange event, and we're going to, this is just a variable. It starts off as undefined, just a piece of state. And we're actually going to take the input there, and for a file type, it has a property called .files. That's an array of the files that you're uploading. In this case, we're just doing one, so I'm looking at the first one, and I'm just setting it there, and I console log it out to make sure it's there. But yeah, super simple. All you're doing is setting the file, and that's the file object that has all the information in the file. So it'll have like the file name, I think it'll have the type, they created, all that stuff. So then when we submit it, I got stuck on this bug for longer than I want to admit, because I put the onSubmit on the button instead. I was like, why is it reloading? After doing this for a decade. Put your onSubmit on the form, because that's the thing that gets submitted, not the button.
Yeah, we had this issue yesterday. We were trying to use like a MUI component that had a button. It had a form that had a button, but it wasn't a submit button. So like we had to refactor that modal basically.
Yeah, I also got like 3 hours just like last night, so that's basically the same as being drunk. That's how I excuse it. But yeah, so we're putting the onSubmits on the form, and we're just going to call our upload image. So since we have it handled in state there, controlled in state there, we're just going to do what we talked about. We're creating this form data thing, and if we look at this is just a object in JavaScript that has a bunch of stuff you can do with it that handles what it says, form data. Look that up at your leisure. In our case, we're just going to create a new empty one, and we're going to use its append method to throw our image, and that's what we call it here. We can call it image or file or sandwich, whatever we like, as long as it's consistent here. So we're going to append the image and the file, which is the stuff that we sent from the onChange. Then once we have that form data object set up, we're going to do our fetch. I just hard-coded stuff here, but I would normally put it in constants and whatnot. So we're doing our fetch to the upload route that we're going to build. Make sure it's a post, and in the body, put a space there. The body is just going to be the form data object, and so that's going to tell Sinatra, the backend, here's the file stuff. It's going to send the metadata and the binary stuff. So once it comes back, we're going to do our JSON dance here, and then we're going to. I'm keeping an image URL state up here. We can do whatever we like on the front with it. Throw an array or another object. I'm just keeping one image here. And I'm just setting the URL to the backend server plus whatever URL it sends back. So when it uploads the image, it's going to create a URL for it that we can use to look at the image. And then I added a little thing here. So if at the bottom, if there is an image URL set, we're just going to show. So the image that we upload will show up back on our page. No, I should start up those servers. You bet. Cool. So I'm gonna go to my repo. Do I still have them there? Yes.
I had a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
So the last line, is that a get request to the backend again to get the URL?
This one?
Or no, the last line in the above that. So is that inside the set image URL in the parentheses? Is that another get request, or is that like a fetch?
What does it look like?
Like a get request. I don't know.
This is our response from the post request, right? So we make the post request to the server, and then your first dot then is getting the response back as JSON, and then the second dot then is adding that response to this URL and setting it to image state.
Yeah, so this is just a string here. It just happens to be a URL. So we're creating that string with the backend URL, which should be in a constant somewhere, and the URL that we got back from the response. And all we're doing is setting that in our state as a string, so we can use it down here.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
I guess why is the response that we're getting back a string?
Because that's what I'm sending back. Because I want the URL of the image that I'm getting, so I can look at it.
Okay.
What else might you expect?
Well, I guess if we're like storing, I guess I'll have to see how it goes, right? So we're sending this image file as whatever it is. We're in the case that we're handling right now, we assume that image is some image that a user has uploaded from their computer. Yeah. And we're sending that image file to our database. And I guess like this is the part that I don't really know is like you're telling us it's going to be stored as binary, but like I'm not a fucking computer. I don't know what that means. So like when it hits, so like when it hits the database, like if that creates a URL string.
Yeah, we're not even hitting the database yet. We're just dumping it in a file.
So this fetch right here, this post request could happen without ever touching the database.
Yeah. In fact, I don't have a database set up here, so I'll show you how that works.
Okay.
Cool. So here's our front end. The form there. I can choose a file. I will submit there when we get a chance. Let me walk you through what the back end looks like here. So on the back end, we're creating a new folder. Actually, let me code this up so I can show you. I'm just back end. So I've set up a couple things in here. I've created a directory called public and created a directory called images inside that one. In our application controller, I'm telling it, this is something you can tell Sinatra, set public folder, public underscore folder to our app public here. So that says, anytime you make a request that's not handled by a route, look in that public folder and serve up a file if you find it there. So you can serve HTML, images, whatever you like from there. It's just a regular plain old web server there. And I'm also setting another variable. This is you can call this whatever you like. I'm just using the file object in Ruby to say, hey, create a new file path from our public folder and then images. So image.dir here is going to be app public images in our Sinatra app. So that's the file I'm creating there, or the directory I'm creating there. Cool. And here's the route. I'm just throwing this in the application controller right now. So when we get a post to upload, it's going to look for params of image. And again, that just has to match what we're calling it here. Again, could be image, file, hot dog, whatever you like, as long as it matches what you're sending. So if we have an image sent up, I'm going to grab the file name out of it. And so this is going to be the actual name of the file that was sent up, not the file itself. And then I'm going to grab the temp file. And this, I know how to do this, but I can't find the documentation for it anywhere. So I'm sure it exists somewhere, or else no one would know how to do it. But basically, when you send a file form data to Sinatra and grab that out of params, it will have a string that is temp file. And that temp file will be the actual file on the server, usually in /temp or /vartemp or something like that, that it took the form data and threw it into a regular file. So all we're going to do then is we're going to copy with file utils that's built into Ruby. I'm going to copy that temporary file to my public images limited directory here. And I'm going to call it the file name instead of whatever temporary name they gave it. And then all I'm going to do is return the URL with the images to the file name. So let me see what that is. So here's our public images here, and I've already got a test image there. So I'm going to choose a file. Let's go into my pictures folder, see if there's anything good in there. Mac, what are we doing? Let's do the meteor. Yeah. So I'm uploading a picture of a meteor. I'll hit this button. It's going to take the binary for that file, create a form data object with it, post it to the server to that /upload. That's going to catch it here. It's going to grab the file name and look at it's going to throw that data into a temporary file, just a regular file on the computer. And then we're going to, what did I just comment that out for some reason? All right, it's going to copy that file over to the name of the file in our public directory and send back the URL. And then our app is going to get that data back and then show us the image. Hopefully, if everything works. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. And so this is literally just, if we inspect it, this is just an image tag that has that data that we sent there. If we look at our components, it's all an app. And here's our state, and that's our image location. And the image is just there. So we can just, look at it straight up. There it is. And we can see that it has put that file in our public images directory. And again, this is just a directory that will grab anything. I could do like an HTML file in here and say, hey, look at me. And then when I go to localhost 92, test.html, it's going to show me that file because it's in that public directory. That's just a straight up web server directory. And that's where it's going to throw all the images. If I uploaded another image with the same name, it would overwrite it. If someone else uploaded an image to overwrite my image, that would happen too. We don't have any. And again, this isn't hitting the database or anything. This is literally just taking that image that's sent, throwing it into a regular old image file on your computer. You can go into your Finder and see it. Backend app public images. And there they are. They're just literally just files on your computer at this point. If you wanted to, you could throw those URLs into a database so they're easier to keep track of. If you're using a real database, you could probably throw the images in there as well. That's got memory versus processing time versus whatever trade-offs. So that's an engineering design decision. But that is the super basic way to use React to upload a file, throw it on the directory with Sinatra, and then send back the URL so you can look at it. Questions?
So we could use this instead of saving it like you are to like a public source folder. If we wanted this to actually post to, say we have like we're making eBay, right? And a user wants to upload a photo of a pillow.
Yeah.
And so they upload the file, and then rather than doing this like return song and dance, we could just say like post to whatever the database that's with this object. And then when we re-render the page, that object would, or this image would be in the database.
Yeah. And then, when you put it in the database, you would still have to associate it with whatever you're doing. So you would like throw it in the database, it would probably have it on ID, you would get that ID. And if it was an eBay posting, you would say, hey, eBay posting database table. If you have a join table with images, one of those images is going to be this ID. And then when you made a request for the data for that page, you would get the image ID and whatnot for it, and it would send back the image somehow.
Right. So if we have a controlled form to like create an eBay post, and that post takes whatever, a name, this image upload, a price, and contact info, and then we send that post request, can we do all of that at the same time with like this image upload the way that you have it?
I believe so, yeah, because that file input is just right here. This file input is, I'm gonna look at the actual file so we can show it in context. App. So this is, this is just a form. We can have as many inputs as we want here, text fields, whatever. It's just one of them happens to be a file. And so when we do our handle submit here, that would take care of the rest of it, and we would add probably, since we have a form data thing, throw them in the form data, but we could do it however you like. We could do separate post requests if you wanted to.
So if we were to include those other data, which is just strings and integers, into form data, we would just make more keys for the form data.
Yeah,
and send it up.
So yeah, so if we wanted to just add a new key, we would just use append there. Oh, I didn't know that was interesting. Is there an example? Nope. So yeah, I would probably do it that way. Just throw new keys on there, and those would show up as where's my backend? So many codes. That would just show up as more keys and params.
Okay, and then could we go over line 15? Just or it's just like super confused. I don't really understand it. Could you like go over it again?
Yeah. What part of it is catching you up?
I mean, honestly, what does file utils exactly do?
Yeah, so file utils is a built-in Ruby thing. That's utils. So this has a lot. It used to be in the file object until like 1.9 or something, thereabouts. But basically, it gives you all of these methods. Could just use copy CP. And these let you do things with files on the computer with Ruby, whether it's on a server or in just a script you're writing or whatever else. And so this just lets you do basic file operations from your Ruby program, which this is just a Ruby program. So I'm using the copy method, and we're just saying I'm going to copy this file here, which is the actual file, and I'm going to copy it to a path that we are creating from our image directory that we've set up here, and the file name that we're getting from the upload. So I'm just saying copy that temporary file to app public images, whatever.jpg.
Okay, so like right now our images are getting stored locally. So if I upload on my computer, I would have the images on my computer. But if I sent this to Shippy, he wouldn't have access to the actual image files, or
They are local to the server. So if you're each running your own servers, yeah, they're going to be local to your own personal servers. If you're hosting it somewhere, it'll stay on that server.
okay.
Yeah. So if if you wind up doing a bunch of images that you want to keep, I mean, they're just files, so just check them in. I think pretty sure that's what I did here. And then let's go to the back end. Yeah, so if we look in app public images, yeah, they're just files. Just check them if you want to save them there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it's easy to get kind of, I don't know, even with relatively quote unquote simple stuff like this. It's easy to kind of get lost in the like new things you haven't seen before, when really it's stuff that you already do. I mean, you've definitely dragged a file from one place to another on your computer at some point, or used CP on the command line. Literally just what we're doing here, just because it's a just because we're doing this convoluted thing where we're creating a form and creating a form data thing and sending it as binary over an API and grabbing out params, and it's in this temporary file somewhere on your computer. They're literally just files. It's literally just stuff you're sending. So it's hard to, and it takes me forever to do it when I'm learning something, but just like kind of taking a step back and demystifying anything's happening, like, okay, this is just taking this data and doing this with it. This is just taking a file and doing that. This is just making a HTTP call to an API. All the stuff, like even the most complicated stuff we do as developers, it ultimately really simple on the level that we're working on anyway. It's just we've just complicated our lives so much by like building stuff on top of stuff and naming things dumb things. But ultimately it's just like, put that data over here, call it this, cool, done. Awesome. What other questions do we have?
I think that's all that I have. I mean, it looks, I don't want to say easy is not the right word, but it seems doable. I mean,
Yeah.
I looked at some other stuff this morning that I didn't think we were going to get done, and we did, and I'm glad we did. So I think we could probably make a run at this at some point.
And if you, I mean, you can Google around and find stuff too. I saw a lot of examples that way more complicated than this unnecessarily, I think. I don't know if they're working with older versions or whatever, but yeah, I mean, this is about as simple as it gets. So go to the front end. There's a link to the back end repo here too. All the code is there, and the walkthrough is in the README. So yeah, play with it a little bit. Trying not to get overwhelmed with like new syntax and new things you don't recognize. It's all, even though it feels way more complicated than it actually is. And every time I go to look at it, I always start off just being like, oh God, this is gonna be a pain in the ass. And then after I've done it, like, oh, this was way easier than I thought. But the first time you do it is a huge pain in the ass to figure out. So lean into the frustration and just take your time with it. Cool. Yeah, grab the code, poke around, play with it, and holler if you have any questions for me about anything. Let me get your faces back. There we go. Last call for questions.
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much. I'll
Awesome.
suck off.
Cool. Yeah, I'll post this in the usual places. And let's see y'all in a little bit. Thanks for hanging out.